Ba-da-ba-ba, ba-da-ba-ba. All right. Promoter 101. 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 Promoter 101.
I'm Windish. This is Promoter 101.
Welcome to Promoter 101. It's episode 18. I'm Dan Steinberg. How you feeling, Luke?
Dan, I am a little bit under the weather, to be sure. Just picking my head up today for the first time after 2 days out of the office this week, which is pretty unheard of. I can't really remember the last time I was down and out like that, just all the worst things in the world. But more than me, Dan, what the fuck happened to your foot? I saw a post on Facebook this week of your foot propped up on a boot on your desk. What is going on in Seattle?
Yeah, I'm an idiot. I think I am Spider-Man, crawling around on cabinets through the garage instead of using ladders and just, took a stumble. And the good news is, it looks like no surgery, just I will be on the injured reserve now for a couple weeks. But the doc says I'll be able to hold a mic in time for ILSMC in London and South by in Austin next month. So I should be game time for that.
Good. I'm glad to have you off the bench for the trip over to London. Should we get into the news of the week?
Let's do it.
My name's Kevin Lyman. As my resume gets shorter, as I do more things, I'm the founder of the Vans Warped Tour, but been around doing shows for over 35 years, from a production level to a producing level.
Since Dan and I are both a little bit down and out, why don't we welcome to the podcast our friend from Amplify Magazine and now Billboard Magazine and proud new father, Dave Brooks. Dave Brooks, welcome to the podcast.
Promoter 101 is joined by Amplified Magazines and now Billboard Magazines, Dave Brooks. Welcome, Dave, and proud papa. How you doing?
I'm good, Steiny. How you doing?
Oh, we're making it through.
Hey, Steiny. Thanks for having me. Lots of big news this week, especially with the Grammys.
Let's hold off on the Grammys for 2 seconds. Let's talk about your big news. You're at Billboard now. What's going on with that, man? Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm now the senior touring correspondent for Billboard. I'll be working out of their office a couple days a week, not only reporting stories for them, but I'll be booking the Polestar Touring Conference coming up this year. Still finalizing the location. Do you have a preference, New York or Los Angeles?
I've been really quiet about this, but I definitely prefer Billboard in New York. It wasn't the coolest conference it's been. Well, it was in LA last year, but that bar hang in New York, man, epically cool.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much to do, and when you're in Midtown Manhattan, it's always a good time.
Well, as a foodie, I got to tell you, it's always nice when you can go to Ruth Chris, which is a block away, somewhere Jason Zink is rolling his eyes at me because going to a chain restaurant is never my partner's first choice. But yeah, lots of good things. I'd love to see it back in New York. I think LA is owned by Polestar. I think New York should be owned by Billboard. And I think IEBA can have Nashville. I think that seems like good, fair fight for everybody.
Well, they've been asking me what I think. I've been telling them 90% of the feedback I've gotten been for New York. Although technically we haven't had an official meeting on that, so I'm not sure how much I can sway them to move the location, but it seems like they're open, so that's a good thing.
There's something cool about being able to speak in that ballroom that Michael Douglas spoke in during Wall Street and gives that epic board of directors pitch. I don't know. I feel really cool speaking in that room, like little Michael Douglas coming out of Steiny at those moments. Not to say that, I've been invited back to speak or anything yet.
Hey, well, I'll see what I can do. I mean, hey, it's the Roosevelt Hotel, an iconic property in Midtown Manhattan.
Anyway, let's talk about last night. Some pretty cool stuff. The Billboard Power 100 list. Tell me about how the party went.
So I was at Cicconi's in West Hollywood, and it was a full Hollywood type of affair. I mean, they had a red carpet coming in with a full media scrum, kind of paparazzi everywhere. And, the honorees of the Power 100, guys like Irving Azoff, Clive Davis, Marc Geiger, Tim Westergren and Pandora was there. I saw J-Bo and Ken from UTA, who I'm interviewing for a profiler this week, and all the Paradigm guys there, including Sam Gorst. And, it was a party. We were having some drinks, lots of schmoozing going on. So Clive Davis got up there with some of my new bosses at Billboard, like Mike Bruno, and they just gave a state of the industry. They kind of welcomed in some new tech leaders in the space, and otherwise, good time.
Awesome. Okay, so Billboard, new world for you. That's super cool. I love the look of that. Obviously, Ray's got his new digs across town, and I'm sure big things happen at venues today there. And it sounds like there's rumors of other announcements coming in that world soon, but let's see how that plays out. But I think Tim and Irving have got a big wallet, and they got plenty of plans there. But we'll have to see how that all plays out with the weeks to come, as no announcement has been made yet of their next step. Although rumors seem to be circulating towards something in that Polestar area.
Hey, look, I saw Irving last night. I asked him about it. You know, he's very careful what he says, but I mean, he basically made it seem like a deal was very close.
Now, let me ask you, is it Irving or is it Mr. Azoff when you talk to him?
It was the first time I talked to him, and I did address him as Irving, but in a very respectful and cool way. And he knew who I was, and he actually said he liked my work. So I guess, the casual approach worked for me. I'll tell you, I don't like calling anybody Mr. I just think it's kind of like old fashioned. And I mean, it seems like if it's just to connote power, is that even useful? I mean, what do you address them as Mr. or Mrs.?
When you want to show respect, when I'm talking to somebody's parents, still I call Mr. or Mrs. When I'm talking to someone that I want to show respect to, I don't mind using it, but you don't want to come off as Eddie Haskell, so sparingly. As people, certainly friends that I know, if I'm saying Mr. in an email, I'll spell it out if I'm being a goofball. But, I don't necessarily think that you need to use it with people that you talk to on a day-by-day basis, Mr. Brooks.
Well, I'll tell you, I know there's one Mr. that always gets the title when he's addressed, and that's Mr. Phil Anschutz. I don't think anybody's ever refers to him in his first name, so there's room for it.
Dave, the Grammys are coming up next week. What's the hot vibe on that?
The top topic is the Grammys are going to be moving to New York next year, but only for 1 year. I mean, they're coming back long-term to LA starting in 2019. It's a story that was first broken by David Friedlander of Billboard, and it's a pretty interesting tale about how some Bill de Blasio associates and allies in New York, really campaigned with the help of James Dolan at Madison Square Garden, Irving Azoff, to get the Grammys to head out east, to lower some of the union costs and production costs to make it affordable. But long term, the Grammys are going to go back to LA. I mean, it makes a lot of sense for them to be in LA. You were at LA Live last week for Polestar Live. I mean, there's the Grammy Museum there. They have the Grammy Walk of Fame. I mean, the campus has Grammy everything all the time. So long term back in LA, and I'm sure the Staples Center folks are happy that they can lock in a long-term future.
Lee Zodelman is always thinking 3 or 4 years down the road, and I'm sure he's welcoming it back when it comes back in a couple weeks, and yet still probably not over the fact that it's skipping a year.
It does give some opportunity to fill that little hole because, hey, it takes 2 weeks to load that thing in and out, and that was part of the reason that it would never really be a long-term thing in New York, because it's just such much valuable time, something that with the entire campus around LA Live, they got a little more flexibility. So maybe, next year, fill that slot with some awesome concerts and content, and then, lock them in long term.
Well, certainly a great place to host. We love LA Live. The bar is a great hang, and I had a ball there last week. Always looking forward to hang out with those guys, whether it's Cassie or it's Lee or anybody else from the facility side. Good people.
Absolutely. Next time you're there, you got to get Lee to take you backstage to the Microsoft Theater. They have this sweet artist green room, and it's got this like $50,000 golf simulator. It is incredible. You're lucky if you get to check it out. I had Russ, who's the GM, take me back there, and we hit a few balls on it. That's cool. And there's so many cool hidden things at LA Live. You can spend so much time there just like hanging out and having a good time.
Very cool. What else is going on that we need to talk about?
This Charles Oakley fight in Madison Square Garden is just, to me, is gonzo. I mean, have you seen this thing?
I saw the video. You don't usually see the older guys, the elder statesmen of the sports, getting this kind of heated action. The video is great.
Yeah, I mean, everyone wants to know what set him off, right?
I think it might be the price of popcorn at the Garden.
Well, we do know he was sitting 5 rows behind James Dolan, right? He has his courtside seats. Charles Oakley, he's an ex-NBA All-Star. He played with the team for 10 seasons. Whatever it was, whether James Dolan just didn't like having him sitting behind him, or as MSG later came out, he was causing a disturbance and maybe yelling and potentially cursing at Dolan. No one has really confirmed either. A 10-person security team came and ejected him, and he was actually arrested and charged with 3 misdemeanor counts. He was released that night. I don't think they're very serious charges. But, the whole thing has a certain TMZ element to it. And normally it would just kind of go away. But the story took on a whole new angle on Friday when Dolan fired MSG's head of security, Frank Benedetto. We don't really know why he was fired. We're assuming it has something to do with Oakley. Keep in mind, Frank Benedetto, he's new to the facility business, but this dude's credentials are amazing. He was in the Secret Service for 27 years. He actively protected George W. Bush, and he was the head of security at Obama's Chicago residence. The guy has done a number of special investigations. He's a recognized security pro. So to cut somebody like that, there's got to be more of the story. I'm digging. I'm trying to figure out what the deal is.
Well, maybe we can get Randy Fibiger on the phone and find out what's going on over at MSG right now. But for the moment, it sounds like a little too expensive popcorn may have heated things up, or maybe it's just the fact that the team's not playing as good as they have in the past. Whatever it is, people get in trouble and get excited about sports all the time, not unlike the rest of the country wishing that New England had lost last week.
Yeah, exactly. Good point.
Okay, Dave, what else is going on out there in the world of entertainment?
Interesting news in the agency world this week. ICM acquired Headline Media Management last week. Now, this is a group that manages news anchors and news personalities. Think Savannah Guthrie on NBC, Wolf Blitzer. It kind of marks a larger trend of agencies getting into the news space. In the past, it had kind of been a real niche market. We're even seeing groups like UTA by the Burnstock Agency. They represented Bill O'Reilly and Anderson Cooper. So it seems like with the more attention to political media, more attention to politics, the big agencies are, starting to kind of recognize the star power of some of these cable news personalities, and they're making their move, bringing them into the Hollywood fold.
Well, there certainly seems to be a conglomeration of these multimedia companies. And we've got Marc Geiger on as our feature interview this week, and he talks about quite a bit about that as William Morris Endeavor has been on the gobbling up and acquisition mode phase, as has Live Nation and AEG as of late. So it seems like taking people over and writing big checks and multipliers of X seem to be part of the business on a daily basis now.
I mean, we're definitely in an acquisition phase for all those companies. Live Nation just bought Blue Note, which expands their business into Israel. So, every day I hear about an acquisition, and you start to wonder, is there anything left to buy? But the answer is, of course, there's plenty out there, to acquire. So, one day, maybe. What about you, Steiny? We always talk about when your big sales coming.
And the phone's ringing more and more. I'll be honest about it. I don't know that we have a game plan to sell right now. It's just we have a really comfortable team. We all get along really well, and I don't think anybody's looking forward to moving into big corporate suites right now. But we're happy at Emporium, and I see the brand staying where it's at for the moment. But when you build a company, as some of our friends in the business have taught us, like Jay Massiano, anybody that builds a company has to believe at some point there's a point where you sell. I don't think we're at that point yet, and certainly didn't mean for this to lead into a commercial about why you should pay X multiple of 12 or greater for us. That's an X number of 12 or greater. And no, I'm just kidding. I don't know. Certainly we've seen a lot of our friends sell lately, and the question's been coming up more and more. So I think it only get more exciting to talk about. But as of the moment, me and Jason are happy to be our own bosses.
Who knows? Maybe you keep importing and you sell the podcast to NPR or NBC one day. Building multiple brands.
Podcast is supposed to be a hobby. It's funny that publicists are calling now and agents are calling to get their acts on. It's just this very weird thing, and sponsor people calling, and it's just like, man, this is a hobby. I don't want your money. Like, we don't want to answer to you. We're just talking to our friends, like having some fun talking shit. It's really kind of weird. The industry nerds out on the weirder things in life, but I'm just stoked people are listening.
That's interesting. You start dealing with the publicist and you taking pitches, and you're really getting into my world, and it's just an endless onslaught. You're almost constantly under siege, and that's a good thing. That means people want to be on your show. They think it's relevant, and more importantly, they want to be in front of your audience. They see a lot of value in that. So that's cool, man. I'm happy for you.
No, I mean, we're excited. We're getting really good guests and excited for the people that are talking to us. And Not a lot of people have pushed back on being on the show, and everybody seems to be taking it seriously. And to be clear, the publicists are calling us about getting their guests on. The podcast doesn't have a publicist, nor does Emporium, or do I. We're just a bunch of kids geeking out to like industry news. It's neat that people are paying attention to it.
I think being a publicist for Steiny would be one of the more interesting jobs if you ever get one.
I don't know that we need one. I think the business speaks for itself.
Yeah, you do your own PR.
I am a concert promoter. Anyway, wasn't supposed to be about me. Let's get back to the news. It sounds like things are going good being a dad. We're on week 3 now.
We're week 3 going into week 4. Yeah, being a dad is cool, man. It takes, it's a lot of time with the baby, but I don't mind being home more, hanging with my wife and dog and little Wesley, just kicking it.
Nice. Well, we're all happy for you on that, and congratulations on the new gig, man. Super thrilled for everything coming up Aces in Dave Brooks land.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Tiny. I really appreciate it.
No problem. We'll have you back on the show real soon. Promoter 101, thanking Dave Brooks for coming on the show.
Awesome. Thanks.
My name is Reese Ryan-Stemmer, and you can watch my daddy on Promoter 101.
Thanks for joining us, Dave. That was awesome. Also happening in the news, UTA has called off their Oscar parties in protest of the new president's immigration policies. Pretty proud of those guys for that. Way to go.
Jeremy Zimmer, in a statement, said that they'd be donating the approximate $250,000 in cost to the ACLU, particularly in defense of one of their clients who had been affected by the travel ban. Bob Lefsetz wrote a great piece about this week, really hoping to see the domino effect following UTA's leadership in this area. WME announced that they're going to be setting up a super PAC in support of this as well to lobby members of Congress in support of the repeal of this ban. So I really hope that the music community in general, from business to artists, starts taking a stance in this. It's glad to see somebody finally did. Polestar was last week in LA. Dan, how was yours?
Yeah, I don't think I ever stopped moving, but I had a great time. We scored some great interviews for some upcoming podcasts. I had a ton of meetings, and the schmooze was on point in the bar. How about you, Luke?
I got to say that despite loving Nashville and the Polestar that was there for 2 years, it's great to have Polestar back in Los Angeles. It felt much better attended. It felt like much a better vibe. It was definitely a more productive conference for me this year, just in terms of not just the podcast, but meetings and seeing some folks. Just felt like a really, really great energy. Plus, let's take a moment to pat ourselves on the back. Let's Drink 5 was fucking amazing. Dan, thank you for all the work and putting together what is a killer party at Exchange LA. You should check out some of the pictures. We'll post it on our Facebook page from Let's Drink 5. Already looking forward to Let's Drink 6 in 2016.
Well, I'm still not over all the work that went into Let's Drink 5 before planning Let's Drink 6, but we had some great partners on that, including Works and Hub Entertainment, Bill Young, our friends over at Access, Ticketfly, of course. It was just an outstanding party, and I don't want to forget Nederlander. So a good group of people coming together to help us throw an amazing party, and never had more people through the door. So outdid the first 4, and quite the night of drinking.
Awesome.
Hey, this is Brian O'Connell with Live Nation, and we are on Promoter 101.
That's it for this week in the news. Let's take a moment to break down hashtag Promoter 101 tweets from this past week. This is the section of the podcast where we break down the musings of Dan on Twitter. If you are not following Dan, please jump on Twitter. He's at the Jew. The moment you learned an amazing date is just confirmed to you, but then you learned it had been confirmed in the system for months.
Yeah, this was a funny one. One of my favorite agents screwed up and forgot to tell us a date confirmed about 2 months ago. But we still got 7 weeks left, and we're going to rock this bad boy out. It's a pretty cool date.
Agent this morning had the perfect response for every issue I had, except for the one about how we're going to sell any tickets for this show.
Yeah, this was like Boiler Room, man. It was the rebuttal book on every issue. I go left, he went right. And I got to tell you, at the end of the day, I just didn't believe in the show and, had to come clean with it. I was like, I don't think it's there. And we'll see. Those guys were really content to remind me that they will be rubbing this one in my face when I'm wrong. And for their sake, I hope they're right. For mine, my money's staying in the bank this time.
When your company confirms an artist you don't want your brand attached to in any way.
I was just being a little bit of a snob this week. Sometimes there's things that you just don't personally see as cool. And I just didn't think this particular act, regardless of the fact that it'll probably make money, just wasn't cool enough in my own head. Sometimes I guess my ego gets ahead of me. That's all that one was about, Luke.
Of course it was.
Hi, it's Rick Greenstein. I'm with the Gersh Agency, going to be on Promoter 101.
This week's featured interview is an icon that oversees 100-plus agents at William Morris Endeavor, as well as being the responsible agent for acts like the Pixies, Neil Diamond, Tom Petty, Nine Inch Nails, and so many, many more. Please welcome for the first time to Promoter 101, the great one, Mr. Marc Geiger.
Promoter 101, we are truly honored to be at William Morris hanging out with the king of cool, Marc Geiger. Thanks for taking the time, Marc.
Am I the king of cool? Wow.
You know, I think when Lollapalooza originally starts the first day, everybody's like, we don't really get it. And then years later, after the tour ends, and it's still like festivals popping up all over the place, yeah, I think you get to own that.
All right, good. I'll take it.
But it's not you saying it, it's me. So
Good. I'll take it even more.
So, little bit of an introduction. You're at William Morris Endeavor. You're a partner. You're number 16 on the Billboard Power 100 list.
Down from 9.
All right, we can get into that if you want. That's awesome. And then your day-to-day, Neil Diamond, Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, Nine Inch Nails, Trans-Siberian Orchestra, and the Pixies.
Many, many more. And my full job is I actually run this place. So I am the global head of music, which means I have to do a lot more management than clients, but do both. A bunch of cool clients. Don't leave out David Byrne and Tom Waits and many others. But I'm just kidding.
And Tom Waits did sign over here recently, right?
Sorry? Yeah,
Tom Waits, it was the last couple of years, right? Because he always
followed it with a
stewarded
massive
everything
tour.
before, but now it's...
And he followed it with a massive tour.
He hasn't done anything, right? Just one Rolling Stone show? I pay attention to that one.
Me too.
Yeah, it would be good.
Yes,
Okay,
sir.
so on top of that, you're a father of 2 boys that you're very active with, and you're an avid skier. So a little history. You started in San Diego, right, in school?
Correct. UC San Diego, was pre-med and baseball player, and then had some music hobbies I wasn't so aware of. I ran the campus record store, the campus radio station, and ended up taking over the campus events committee. And they all went very, very well. And the events committee went so well that one of the guys on the baseball team said, hey, you're really good at this. We should start a company together. And his parents had some money. So he funded the company and I did the work, and we started a little company. It was an on-campus private entrepreneurial concert promotion firm. We bought a bunch of shows. They all sold out. And then I got hired by what was now Live Nation, but what was Avalon Attractions at the time. So I ended up, middle of my sophomore year, going to work for the biggest promoter in San Diego while I was still in school.
That was Brian.
Brian Murphy was a partner in that company, and it ended up going even better. And so my pre-med thoughts and dreams went out the window, and my baseball dreams went really out the window. And it ended up being a full-time concert promoter, junior and senior year, at over 100 shows a year. And
You were doing 100 shows a year while in school.
while in school.
Yeah, that wasn't going to work with doing med school.
And it wasn't very good for my other classes either.
How far down the line in med school did you get? Did you wind up taking your boards?
Pre-med. This was undergrad. I never made it.
So you didn't take your boards or anything?
No. I was wiped out well before then. This is Chem 6C, 6B, and all that. By my senior year, it was probably closer to 120 shows. All I really remember about my senior year was taking the midterm and the final and not going to one class. So it was pretty much done by then. And I was established as a concert promoter. And actually, no, by senior year, I was already hired by Regency, which became Triad, which then became William Morris, to move to LA and be an agent while I was working full-time as a promoter. So I was really kind of done at that point. And
Were you still in school when you got hired by Regency?
yeah, the story is that as part of these 100 shows in San Diego, I founded a venue called Humphreys, which has...
Humphreys by the Sea.
Yes, which I started, it would have been 82. By 84, we had run a full slate of shows, it was probably one of the hottest venues in San Diego.
And still kind of is.
It still is, 30-something years later. In 83, I promoted a show by Sergio Mendes. It sold out, and Brazil 86 or 83, whatever it was. And Richard Rosenberg was the head of Regency artist. Sergio was also his client and good friend. Sergio couldn't sell tickets, and he sold out in San Diego. Humphrey's a very good ticket-selling venue, by the way.
Not a bad view either.
Not a bad view and a great place. He drove down to see what the fuss was, heard about me because another agent for Regency had met me before and talked good things. He came down and offered me a job on the spot. He said, anybody who could sell out Sergio Mendes must be brilliant, and he had to hire. So I had a bunch of job offers. I took that one, and the day after graduation, which I didn't quite graduate, I was 12 units short, I moved to LA and started my career as an agent, which lasted from 84 to 91 and culminated in Lollapalooza and Jane's Addiction, Nirvana, and all those things.
You were Regency into Triad.
And then I left prior to the William Morris purchase. I was not part of William Morris.
Okay, so when you went into Start...
It was Regency.
Okay.
Then that year they merged with 2 other companies, became Triad.
So between the time that Artist Direct popped up and... you leaving Triad, what did you do in that space in between?
There wasn't any time. I left. I
can't
went to
be
work
right.
for Rick Rubin at American Recordings, and I was part of the executive team running his company. I learned the record business. So I did that for 5 years, and that's where I conceived Artist Direct. So I left Triad to go in the record business.
And you thought you were done being an agent at that point?
I thought I was done being an agent, and I went to learn other things. Agents and promoters both had a negative perception in the music ecosystem. No longer has that. But at the time, agents and promoters were like outside the business, and it was all record companies and things like that. And I was a little irritated by that, and I wanted to get on that side and learn that business. And I had Seymour Stein, Rick Rubin, and Gary Kurfirst, all good friends and mentors, and I decided to go work for Rick and learn the record business.
And it's fair, at the time that you're talking about, the early 90s, promoters had a very bad reputation in the music industry, too.
I think the whole live side of the business was treated as the bottom of your shoe.
Used car salesman kind of
and
vibe.
Lowly esteemed, I guess, if that's the right way to say it, position. And that was not for a young guy who had some altruistic thoughts and thought he could bring something to this. I didn't like that. I wanted to get into it and be in a more of a influential position. And I did that for 5 years, and the internet really was starting to blow up. So I spent time with Rick, learned the business, learned a lot of things. He was fantastic. Signed Johnny Cash, made that Chili Peppers, Blood Sugar Sex Magic, did all kinds of interesting things, signed bands, worked in the Warner system, watched Warner's get decimated at the time. A whole bunch of things went down that I benefited from. But the biggest one was really finding all those properties on the internet, buying the Ultimate Band List, UBL.com, conceiving Artist Direct, and starting that next phase.
Okay, and it's fair to say that you came to Polestar as the internet was happening and told the entire industry, own your websites, or some kid is going to own them out of a bedroom that's in high school until you figure this out. You were the first one to say that to the industry.
I said a lot more than that, but you're correct. I tried to get the whole music ecosystem to pay attention to what I thought was to come, which was a major change in the world. And ironically, there were 3 phases, right? You try to pass on knowledge that you think is good for everybody, right? Phase 1 was in 2000 when the market crashed. We went public and everything fell apart.
Your timing was just interesting on that.
On the IPO, but anybody who was in the internet in 2000 went from hero to goat. I mean, anybody. Mary Meeker, Jeff Bezos, everybody. That was the first phase where you felt, oh shit, I shouldn't have opened my mouth and talked so big about what was to come because people are really handing it back to you, right? So as I said to people, I felt like Christopher Columbus having sailed around the world twice, got back to Genoa, and everybody strung me up, on the cross saying, see, I told you the world is flat. That was phase 1. Phase 2 was looking at how society has been changed today, 2017, or any time in the last 5 years, by the internet, mobile devices, etc., and thinking, God damn, I really undersold this. I was screaming from the rooftops, and it's 50 times bigger than I even said it was going to be. And phase 3 is I'm now here back in the agency business. I've been here for a while, and everybody thinks I'm an internet superstar, which is kind of funny for failing, right? Because I ultimately failed at that time because I wasn't, forget that it was far ahead and there was a multi-trillion-dollar market crash in the way. I was also an inexperienced CEO that would have had to last 10 years at least of treading water before the business really started to take off and make money. So it was an interesting evolution of failure, I should say.
Well, I think every part of anybody that's successful has had a little bit of failure anyway.
No question. And I would say, obviously, you're right. The biggest learning, growth spurts, and changes come from failure, not from success. So I learned a lot from it and became a much better business person, leader, etc. But I still lost $63 million and went through it and had to live that whole cycle. So it's an interesting trade-off.
63 million.
Correct.
I haven't lost that much on a show yet.
Yeah, well, you didn't bet as big. It was a big bet.
All right, so we'll go with that. We could spend all day talking about the history, but I want to talk about the digital space and what's to come. I think you've got a view on that that's pretty amazing. I mean, you oversee almost all of the agents here, right?
All but Nashville.
So that's about 100 agents plus around the world that answer to you?
Correct.
So how you find time to rep these bands and oversee and find time for all of these other agents is amazing.
I'm very organized and I work late hours, long hours.
Okay, so the digital space, it's got to be exciting to you.
It's always been exciting. It's just, we're now in the 13th chapter and the book has no end in sight.
Okay, so you booked roughly, 3,500 shows last year?
35,000.
35,000. 35,000 shows. The agency.
Yes.
That's an amazing number of shows. And there's a lot of things you're excited about. The guys that work for you say that Hans Zimmer is something you're excited about touring.
Okay, Dan, we went from the digital space to amount of shows to Hans Zimmer.
I'm trying to show the complex.
Okay, what do you want me to talk about?
Well,
You
no,
wanna go-
but
hang
I'm
on.
trying to show the complexity of the things you're involved with real quick.
There's a lot more than that. We just launched Lollapalooza in Paris. I'm still a managing director of that. Obviously, Berlin is off to the races. South America's way up. We got 6, and we're launching Toronto next year. That'll be 7 major festivals.
So Palooza's going to Toronto.
Well, Paris, 17, Toronto, 18.
But once they're online, they stay online, right? That's the hope.
Yeah, I mean, Chile is in its 6th or 7th year, Argentina, Brazil, all of them. Berlin is going into its 3rd year sold out. So, yeah, this is a real successful business. But if you want to describe different things I'm doing, that's a biggie. There's a ton in the digital space we can talk about and where it's going. Represent about 80 clients. The agency has about 2,200, 100-some agents, 35,000 gigs, billions of dollars in guarantees and overage. And it's exciting, and the market is healthy and fun to be a part of. And then a bunch of other things I do, too.
Well, let's talk about Palooza for a second. So it toured for a very long time as an actual tour.
7 years.
Just a pretty good long cycle, and you would say that the Warped Tour came out of that, the concept of it, obviously.
Ozfest, Horde, Warped, and I think I'm missing one. They all came out of it, and they all had their runs. And Warped had the longest run.
And then the concept of it when it went away and then came back to Chicago.
What happened was that 2 things. One, by 97, the artist that Lollapalooza was trying to work with and reflect in society, that whole camp of music went kind of stale and old. It became very commercialized, the same way companies, when they lose their founder, sometimes lose their way when they have a corporate CEO come in. So alternative music by the mid-late 90s had gotten very bland and vanilla, all right? And without criticizing any artists and naming names, if you looked at the charts at that point, they would have been taken over by a very maudlin, commercial, bad version of what was happening. And so we were not money-focused, we were credibility-focused, so we decided to actually pull the tour down, okay, because we actually thought this is terrible for music. So we pulled it down after the 97 tour.
Was that the one where they did 2 nights?
No, that was in 04. So in 03, we decided to put Lollapalooza back on. We had a decent year with Soundgarden or Audioslave and Jane's Addiction and a bunch of others. And then in 04, we wanted to change the format. We thought the format was broken. Okay, and we booked Flaming Lips and String Cheese. Perry wanted a jam band. Beck, we booked 2 different nights. And that didn't sell well, and we canceled it pretty quick. And we realized that we guessed wrong on the format, and it was now bands were coming back, the format was bad. And the European festival format, also reflected in Coachella, was the winning format, so which was the 3-day modern festival that you know today. So I would call all the touring festivals kind of the infancy of the festival business in America, even though the first phase was Altamont, Woodstock, Cal Jam, Ozfest, which was ironic because they were more like the festival format is today, but they didn't repeat. Those founders put on a show and then did one and left, which was really weird.
Because they built a brand and then let it go.
I don't think they thought about it as that. Ozfestival did 2. Everybody else did 0. Woodstock came back 20 plus years later. So anyway, when Coachella started in 99, and I was very much part of that with Paul, we looked at Lala and said, we got to do our own Lala as Coachella. Charlie Jones had come to us with a proposal from Capital Sports. This is pre-C3. Said, I believe Lala's a great brand. I want to do this with you. We were tired at that point. We brought him in as a partner.
So they energized it.
They energized it, brought fresh legs to the process, different ethos to it, which was great. We needed it. And we set about looking at 7 major cities. Charlie had a feeling it needed to be in a certain beautiful park, blah, blah, blah. Out of the 7 cities, everybody thinks we wanted to go to Chicago. That was not the case. Chicago came back with the best proposal, and that's why it's there. We launched in 05, and the rest is history. All right. And then we've been building it out since 09. Lala's brand equity and the event was so strong that I had a real point of view that it could be a global brand and could be the top tier festival, not a small one, but a major market, major event. You know, if it was a hotel, it'd be a 4 Seasons chain. It was high end, not something else. And we've been successfully doing that since.
And you kind of foreshadowed yourself in Aspen a couple of years where you mentioned Paris didn't have a major festival, and how was that possible? The room kind of pushed back on you because the attacks had just happened.
Listen, Paris has been through a lot of things for a lot of years. And if you're a history major and you go to the museums in Paris, you see that a lot's happened over the years, whether it's from kings or Napoleon and what have you. I don't
The
think
security's tight there right now. You walk around and they've got their fingers on the machine guns.
festivals happen all over the world, in hotspot areas, in current hotspot areas, in spots that used to be, music and most events are luckily immune to these types of things. And, one of the attacks obviously was on Queens of the Stone Age at the Bataclan and others. And, 30 days later, the market was making a comeback, right, with shows and events. I think that the human spirit, whether it was 9/11, whether it's what's going on in the Middle East right now, and you look at the horrible situation with the refugees, you see signs of light, people moving, victories. It's not easy. My parents were refugees from Hungary when the communists came in 56, and they were in World War II in the camps. So they were Holocaust survivors and communist revolution survivors, and they ended up moving to America and doing great, and their kids did great, and their kids are doing great. So I'm a believer in the human spirit all over the world. But at the end of the day, people want good times. They want great events. They want food, entertainment, visual entertainment. They want the internet, no matter where they are. And there might be a bomb exploding outside or guns or what have you, but I think after a certain period of time, law and order prevail, and you don't live in fear of one event, right? Trump just banished all Muslim immigrants, or putting that ban on. The internet meme that's going around shows that, there's under 9 people killed by Muslim terrorists in this country, and I don't know, 140,000 or some stupid number of Americans that kill Americans. So I'm not sure the statistics, whether it relates to terrorism in Paris or anything else, make any sense at all as it relates to putting on events.
Okay, and you mentioned the culinary space. That's something that William Morris has been on the cutting edge of, not just staying in the music lane and the comedy lane. You guys have really opened it up with the culinary space and back to the digital space. Now with the UFC and the IMG buy, you guys are building something bigger.
Yeah, that's for sure. I think we have visionary leadership that wants to build a mega digital media company for the next 20, 30 years. I think they see the agency business as great and an access engine for the business. But I think Hollywood's historically wanted to build assets from service businesses, and our leadership is really doing it and taking the risk, right? So whether it's fashion, culinary, production, college, various sports. This weekend alone, we had Miss Universe happen in the Philippines, which we own, a major PBR event played this weekend, which we own, and a major UFC fight. And if you were watching television, a lot of sports on television this weekend, and Miss Universe was ours. So it's exciting. The agency's hot, and what Ari and Patrick, who are my bosses, are building is just astounding in all of these areas, not just fashion, art, with Freeze and IMT models and, fourth event. Serena won the Australian Open. We work with Serena and Venus, and we're part of the Australian Open. So I was watching that. I'm a tennis player, and watching the Federer and Nadal match and going, hey, we have our fingers in that pie too. It's fantastic.
Now, being involved with IMG, has that hurt you and benefited you in different ways? It's just all been upside?
So far, all upside. I think the structure of how the companies operate is very clear. So the agency business, it's enhanced by the opportunities that are across the IMG spectrum, but it doesn't change what we do and how we do it.
Can you tell me, going into the Super Bowl weekend, Bruno Mars was your client?
He is our client. He went to CA for a month, then we got him back.
He's yours?
He's ours.
Well, that really fucks up this question, but I'm going to ask it anyway.
Okay.
So then that's kind of awesome, because that's the hope, right, that you always get the act back if they ever leave.
You never know, sometimes.
So the Bruno Mars things, Gaga as well, right? You have those moments where the client's there and then they're gone, and they have these big moments, right? Is it hard to watch that when somebody's successful like that, having that moment, or you just...
No, we just signed Kendrick Lamar, and we don't look back. We look forward. We're lucky enough to have the best collection of artists in the world that we work with. Now, you're a promoter, so you get to decide, because you talk to agencies all day and see their rosters, and it's a matter of taste. But I think that we built something pretty astounding here. And if you think you're not going to lose a client, then that's like an athlete thinking you're never going to lose a game or a match. That's just unrealistic, all right? Both because organizations' performance is not always 100 or 200%. There are mistakes made at times, and then there's situations, and then there's clients that can get unhappy for various reasons, even if it's not warranted. So between those three things, you're going to have some losses. The question, and the way I always looked at it, it's like a win-loss record in sports. If your roster is getting better and improving, and your signings are outpacing your losses by a factor of X, you're in great shape, and we've been there for a while. So I think we just try and focus on pushing ourselves, being a bit visionary, but really playing team ball and surrounding the clients with an A team and really pushing on internal communication and delivering. There's a standard in the world that we have to live up to and deliver to. And while we don't look at our competitors as much, we look at ourselves and go, are we doing a great job for the client? Sometimes we're not, and we get fired. We don't think about the spilt milk. Once it's gone, it's gone.
There was something we talked about at the lobby. We were at the Ticket Fly conference a couple of years ago in San Francisco, and you were looking around and you're like, I don't have a relationship with most of these people. I'm leaving a lot of money on the table. I need to fix that. And it was a really interesting moment because it wasn't like their money's not important. That was never a thing. We're a big agency. We have enough for everybody. How come we don't have their money? And I love the way you looked at that and voiced it immediately, not only to me in private, but then you got on stage and voiced it to every one of those people in the room.
Well, I think it was a realization that I'd gotten big in the job and that the indie club owner, which is very much as important to me as a president at Live Nation, we'd probably lost a little touch with as we grew. And I know, coming from super indie cool background, that if I look at all the club owners at a Ticket Fly conference and I don't know a whole lot of them, I have a problem I have to fix. Now, ironically, Ticket Fly then sold to Pandora after that, so it was less indie, but it's all good. You know, look, you try your best to stay, at least I do, and I think we do. We try to stay in touch. The demands of the business grow and the company grows, but we try. Now, have I gone out and taken 40 meals with all of those people there? No, and I need to, but
there's only so many days in the year.
That's the problem. I very much recognize that the bigger we get, the more important it is to stay in touch with club owners and buyers.
Let me ask you this. As an indie promoter, I deliver myself to your office at least once a year. I'm kind of wondering how many of the other guys in that room
They don't. You're a unique guy. You got to remember, Dan, you grew up and you know all of us, right? And so you come in here, you don't have any fear of coming in. And when you come in, I see you bounce around the office, you say hi to how many people?
15, whatever.
15, whatever. But you have relationships. This and Sierra are the two biggest agency. Paradigm's big as well.
Right.
How many people do you know in Paradigm? Agents?
Probably 95% of them.
And how many do you know here? 15, 20? Or more?
Yeah, more.
Okay. But that's on you. How many agents do you think those people we're talking about know?
Well, and that's part of my question is it's not completely your...
That's right. So people have to show up. You know, in any dating game, it's two people playing, right? It's the agents getting out and it's the promoters making themselves known and being a storyteller, even if it's a local storyteller on email for how well their club's doing or what it means. I'd much rather read something I don't know, which would be, let's say all those club owners after Ticket Fly conference sent me an email with what their lineups were for their rooms, just so I could see who played in the clubs, right? It gives you a profile, kind of like seeing a playlist or somebody's record collection or their iTunes. Can you imagine that nobody reached out to me? No one. So no one reached out to me at all about it, and that's nuts. Here's the head of a big agency coming up to speak, and I'm clearly throwing myself on the court saying, hey, I want to get to know all of you. That's whack, right?
I find that interesting.
Mark, I'd love to come visit with you. Not one.
I did find it interesting. I walked through the lobby, and we see each other. We always talk.
Sure.
And I found it interesting that no one stopped, because we must have talked for, 25 minutes that day? No one stopped to bother you the entire time, which...
Are they intimidated or are they stupid?
I don't know, but growing up in this industry, I've never been in a lobby with you where we hadn't been interrupted 17 times in a minute.
And on that one, it wasn't. They were either too cool for school or they were dopey.
Or they just don't know better.
Here's the bottom line. Everybody listening, just don't be scared to connect, okay? Because you either know how to connect through technology and you're really facile with it, and your Instagram, Facebook, Snapchat, and other lists are pretty big, and you're staying in touch with people that way. When you're at a convention with somebody or somewhere, you connect. Just learn how. I think our world is about connection. So there you go.
There's some guys that are really good at that. If you're at the conferences, watch Bill Silva work the room, work Wayne Forte. Those guys are great. Rob Light's amazing at it.
They have to be. It's their jobs.
Yeah. There's those guys that can glide through the room and see 14 people ahead, and it's amazing. Before I let you go, and I know you have to go, there's a couple of things
Keep asking.
that I love. At the end of the year, you always put out your list of the best songs and
albums.
Right.
Some songs, but mostly albums. I'm still an album guy.
But it's one of those things that I actually look forward to because it's like, it's part of my holiday travel is like, I wait to which ones don't I know? Because this is the stuff I should know. It's like,
I do the same. So believe me, I look forward to getting lists as much as making them.
And it's always amazing. If there's one or two acts of yours on the list, it's a lot. It's like, you won't disclose acts, but I bet sometimes maybe you do, but just because it's the list.
No.
It's
completely
everything.
unbiased. No, this is my taste. This is me as the same guy that ran a record store program. I was on 3 radio stations as a DJ doing the import hours when I was younger. So I take music filtering very seriously, and had I not been doing this job, I'd be sort of a music critic, right? So I still devour the All Music Guide, and I read all the top 10 lists, and I'm a freak for this stuff, and I love it. And if you look at my list, I'm not very mainstream. I have pretty left of center taste. So I like to think I'm the biggest executive with the weirdest taste because, not everybody has to love mainstream music to run an organization, but there you go.
Well, and when I think of you, I think of the original Palooza lineups from the tours, the Susie and the Banshees, those type of bands that are left of center and yet became very cool, Violent Femmes-esque acts. And now you're working day to day with Neil Diamond, Tom Petty, and you've been able to broach from one side to another. Was that something that came naturally, or was that a progressive growth?
Naturally. I think the job, if you're good at what you're doing, you should be able to handle a variety of situations that are within the field, right?
Because mentally, seeing you as the Pixies agent makes a whole lot of sense to me.
Well, listen, I'm now 54 years old, and I'm running arguably one of the biggest agencies in the world, so I have to be more varied than I was as a younger guy, right? And my skills have to translate across. But look, I still sign baby bands myself. I was more excited to get the new Mew album than I was any other record recently. So, taste or taste, and you stay in an industry now for 34 years, you hope, no more. God, 35 and a half years. If you're still enjoying it and freaking out for a new record, and, I probably listened to 8 records over the weekend that I hadn't heard. I'm doing this at 54 years old, running an organization. That actually is more important to me than running an organization, is that I still love what I do, and I look forward to devouring new music and being in front of, if you walk around this place, and you have, Dan, there's 100 to 150 young people trying to make it to be an agent. They're assistants, they're in the mailroom, you see them all around here. And they're all in their 20s pretty much, occasionally in their 30s.
Very much that Swimming with Sharks vibe.
And they're all, scared shitless of me, but they're basically trying to do great. My goal is to know 10 times more about music than they do. So it kind of keeps me young. So when they haven't heard Kodak Black and 21 Savage and I'm all over it with them, or the new Klein Stuff record, it kind of is, it drives me a bit. So, I'm in a young person's business, and it helps me stay young but keep competitive. And that's kind of my raison d'etre on music.
So where is the industry going in your eyes?
To a very good place.
Because it's fair to say that live music is probably the healthiest it's ever been.
And it will get bigger by 50% and be healthy for the next 15 years.
And Jay Massiano told us a couple weeks ago in Aspen that if you can't make money as a concert promoter right now, you need to find another gig.
He's right. It's the best it's ever been, everything's selling. It's generally fueled by the transition to streaming, which started many years ago, but really became recognized by the record business and the publishers in the last few years that the streaming model was going to be the one. Now, Schmuck Boy here has been saying for 24 years, including through the download revolution, the streaming and on-demand, whatever you want to call it, jukebox in the sky, subscription, blah, blah, blah. It's here now, okay? Nobody's
Which
arguing.
you predicted years ago.
24 years. I
service.
mean, you can read them and all. You can see it online. It's stupid. But forget that I predicted it. It's here. What streaming music allows people to do is consume a lot more music because it feels free, right? So there was, in the first 6 months of 2016, there was 1 trillion tracks streamed. 1 trillion. There's music at the
Hard number to envision.
That's right. There's music being streamed all over the world in every single location, from the Middle East and Africa to India and China and the deepest, Siberian whatever. And that music access fuels music fandom, which fuels ticket buying. So as more people have more access to music 24/7 of all kinds on demand, all the ancillary businesses that are fed from listening, merchandise, ticket buying, concert, all of them are growing. And so I think we're in a golden age of music. I had been predicting it for years. I spoke about it for years. I think the industry actually now accepts it to be true. The recorded music industry will be growing, 10, 20, 30% per year. Will grow somewhere between 100 and 200 billion in revenue. Previous peak was 40. Music touring industry is now at $26 billion. Probably grow to 40 billion annually over the next few years. No, it's 15 years. So, you're in a bull growth market, and it's really exciting. And I think anybody anybody working in the industry or artists should be knocking a lot of wood that they're born during this time or alive during this time and able to enjoy a golden age of our business.
And the business lately has been showing that sign of it with acquisitions that are 7, 8, 9, 10 times multipliers. You keep seeing Live Nation and AEG gobbling people up.
And others, right? SFX did. That was the big run-up prior. So,
which was, I think, everybody's retirement plan to get rid of the original guys, old guys.
Well, it didn't work, but the point is M&A and consolidation. You're seeing RDO get bought by T-Mobile or Sprint. You're going to see M&A across publishers. You're going to see M&A across, there's no more record companies really to consolidate, across the front ends, the titles, the Deezers, the Rhapsody, Napster, et cetera. They're still to go. You saw M&A inside of agencies, Windish, AM Only, Codas. You're going to see a lot. So I think M&A and consolidation are being put together because this world that we live in depends on scale. Amazon has scale. Facebook has scale. Tencent has scale. Google has scale. Live Nation has to have scale. AEG has to have scale. And what that means, they have to be big. They have to be everywhere. They have to be networked. You can't.
Global. Yeah.
They have to be global. And we have to be global and have to have scale. So I think you're in the era where if you're going to take on the world, you have to be big enough to take on the world. That's not that easy. It's easy to take on Oregon in the beginning or whatever. I'm not saying that's easy, but you know what I mean. You're now a national promoter at times, right? You're taking things and different things.
Financially, we couldn't do that when we started. We had to grow into that.
There you go. And even now, your own company has limitations on what it could do,
absolutely.
Right? Or have to get finance. So the game today is to be able to get enough finance and resource that if you're going to compete, if you're going to be dealing with Live Nation, you got to be big enough to deal with Live Nation. If you're going to deal with Google, you got to be big enough to deal with Google. Or otherwise, you're the shopkeeper that's bummed about Walmart and Amazon. You're out of business. So, it's just a different time.
So when something like Canada happens where Live Nation buys out Union, taking out the only real major independent across the country, and basically, besides going up really north into Eventco territory, there's not another real independent national concert promoter in Canada now.
Well, in Canada, no. Peter McCulloch's still there and his kid. Paul Merce is still there. So, David
I don't think
Carver,
those guys are set up to do the volume.
David Carver's still there. But, Union got bought out because they got in trouble. So you got to get real on that one. That one, Union got in trouble, had financial difficulties, and had a perfect storm. They grew to 8 festivals.
Bad weather, bad timing,
went down,
the oil.
And they were undercapitalized.
Which goes back to having enough money to play the game at that level.
That's right. And they didn't, and they got in trouble, and they got taken over cheap. I'm a fan of the future because I think the future has been more exciting than the past, and there are people who are like, oh, it's not like the old days, and they're romantic for the old days. I'm not one of those people. I study the future enough on all fronts, whether it's medicine, artificial intelligence, robotics, smart home, voice activation. That's the way my brain works. I have a curious brain, including in entertainment. What I see is that everything's getting more efficient and better for people and consumers, including, by the way, poverty. Forget the Middle East. Poverty, health, murder rates, disease control. Most of the world's actually getting better, and it's because of technology. They're coming close to cancer research, all this stuff. So for me, bring on the future. It's exciting. And whether that's consolidation or M&A or a giant like Live Nation, I was the one guy, everybody else was bitching about because they were scared of a big company. I was the one who was saying, hey, if you don't have a big company, they can't invest in technology and make things better. You can't invest in ticketing systems. You can't invest in, I want to buy my ticket from a Spotify concert list that's inside the app and be able to put my finger on the touchpad and have it already
one click done.
One click like an airline, show up with a QR code or Apple Pay. The only way these things happen is when companies get big enough to actually make them happen. When you're a little tiny indie and struggling to put on shows, you can't spend $20 million in technology development. So I think there's something to being big which isn't evil, right? Amazon's in every one of our lives. And Amazon's bigger than anything we've known. And they're really scary in a good way, but they're scary because they have all the data. So you can look at it and go, ooh, Amazon blew out all the little shopkeepers. Most of the people I know would really be bummed with that Amazon, I do 98% of my shopping on it. So, hey, I think the world's in a better place.
Certainly easier to get music and videos and entertainment.
Incredible. My kids, they don't have to get their parents to drive them to a record store and scrounge for $20 to buy 2 albums. I did.
Well, and speaking of record stores, you're old enough to remember having to try and get ticket counts from individual record stores.
And I was a record store, so I did all of it. So
they were never right, and the money was always off.
So, listen, I'll take the new world over the old all day.
So email with the younger people is a thing. And you manage a lot of younger kids. A lot of kids in my office
don't email.
Don't like email. They don't even put it on their phone until it's insisted.
Right.
And we've switched to Slack through the office so we can find them on their phones on the weekend because they don't respond to emails. So is that a problem, or is that something where
I like technology, and if we got to Snapchat them, we got to Snapchat them. What can I tell you?
you're finding other ways to find the kids that
Yeah,
work for
I
you,
mean,
or are you
I've-
insisting they learn how to use email on their phone?
I mean, listen, if they're here, they have to use email. So I think that's because it's hard to use attachments in other areas, and there's other things. But look, technology's going to move forward. I remember when it was telexes into faxes, and I was the only one with email. And me and 3 other people had a BlackBerry, right, and on the little brick. So I think technology should move forward. I'm glad that kids find
This
their own
vision
technology.
of you and Andrew Druskin being the only people emailing each other in the industry.
That's true. I'll be there with the kids, is what I'll tell you. I'm not worried about them not being there with me.
All right. I know you got to get going, but I want to thank you so much.
My kid's playing soccer. I got to go see him.
All right. Awesome. Thank you for taking the time.
Dan, it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Wow. Marc Geiger. What an amazing mind. That guy is so ahead of the curve in technology and where things are going next. Really does set the bar for cool.
Hi, this is Rick Barrel with ICM Partners. You can catch me and my mustache on Promoter 101.
Our second feature interview this week includes 2 of the tour manager heavyweights currently serving as Justin Bieber's tour manager, David Klein, and from Black Keys, Major Lazer, Emperor of the Sun, the great Jim Runge. Promoter 101. We are at Polestar Live hanging out in the suite, and tomorrow morning is Production Live. So we've got a treat today where we've got 2 of the biggest production guys in the game, which means these guys have not seen their beds in a very long time. Jim Runge, David Klein, hanging out with Jake, who's going to be like co-hosting with me today.
Hey, what's up?
Welcome, guys.
Thank you for having us. Thank you.
So the last year has been really interesting, in particular for you, David. You had a bus catch fire. You've jumped from a couple different tours.
Yes, I have.
So let's talk about the bus. That was like national news, right?
Yeah, I was on a tour bus a couple years ago. We were heading into Denver, and there was an accident on the freeway, so traffic had stopped, and we went 45 miles an hour full speed into the back of a FedEx semi-truck.
Everyone was fine, but the bus did not survive the day.
Yeah, everyone lived, thankfully.
Even the driver.
We were all like a little banged up, for sure. Yeah, driver lived as well, thankfully. But yeah, that bus is...
Still some people hurting from that. I know the LD had a broken... I mean, she was in a rough shape for a while. Wasn't your band members also hurt pretty badly in that?
Yeah, I had a drummer who had to have a couple surgeries so that he could walk again. He couldn't use his left leg after the tour. I had an LD who had to take about a year and a half off. She had multiple bones broken in her foot and leg, and so we definitely had some serious injuries, but everyone lived, thankfully, and we got through it.
Eli Young just had a very similar experience a couple days ago. It seems like overall, in the grand scheme of things, the buses are so safe, but things happen.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, you figure, there's submarines traveling at 60, 70 miles an hour down the highway with 12 people in them. Doesn't take much. We've all probably been in an accident sometime in our lives, so the chances of something happening at some point are real. And so it's something we're always conscious of. And on that same note, soon it looks like there'll probably be seat belts in buses, so they're even changing the safety. And, it's something we're always conscious of.
Do the bunks have airbags?
No.
But there's roadies for that.
You sleep with your feet to the front. That's something we all learn. Besides, not shitting in the toilets, the second thing you learn is you always sleep with your feet forward, because if the driver puts on the brakes, it's one thing to break your ankles, but it's another thing to
a concussion,
break your neck. It'd kill you.
Yeah, when my bus hit the semi, I was sleeping, so I was thrown feet first, and I had 2 crushed vertebrae in my lower back. So if that had been my neck,
your head would have been.
I would have been
compression fractures.
Yeah.
So if it would have been the head, you'd be dead. There's no question about it that when you wouldn't survive that.
Yeah, no, I would have not.
Okay, so you don't get to do Justin Bieber or Major Lazer or Emperor of the Sun kind of tours without learning your skill and coming up through the clubs and the theaters and doing production on all levels. What's the path? How did you get to handling stadium shows now for an artist and running those days? That's got to be an interesting path to get there, because most people never get to that level.
Exactly, but it's just starting from the bottom and working up. I started as an intern at a rehearsal facility in Hollywood, and I was pushing road cases and sweeping floors and getting coffee for bands, and I worked my way from that up into the live sound and driving vans and mixing bands, and then you work your way up.
Building character, as they call it.
Building character, yeah, exactly.
And that pays really well?
Building character?
Yeah.
It's a very long-term investment.
Character is what you get from that. That's all you get from that.
It's a long-term character investment.
That's all you get. Same with I think we've already covered that in my previous Promoter 101. I mean, I started in vans and trailers. I did that for probably my first 10 years. I'm not that far away from that. You know, I started doing production. I started in the lighting field where Dave started doing sound. I started doing lighting and kind of came up there. Luckily, I got out of that real quick so nobody would know how bad I was at that. But now they can focus on how bad I am as a tour manager instead. Yeah, I mean, I was doing bus. I traveled with, Alejandro Escovedo, put on 100,000 plus miles with him in the 90s and doing, Texas Americana stuff for 10 years.
Now, it used to be that a band would have their guy in each country, but now that's kind of changed, and you stay with the act. You get to a certain level where it's not about the local guy, it's about your guy.
At our end, I mean, I think we still have some of that in.
I mean, you both spend as much time out of the country as you do in the country.
Depending on the artist. I mean, you probably do now, Dave. I mean, with Justin, I'm sure you guys tour probably elsewhere as much, and I'm sure I will with Imagine Dragons.
Yeah, I mean, our upcoming 9-month schedule, only 2 months of that is in the U.S. and Canada, so.
Yeah, and obviously with Major Lazer, it was 50-50 probably, if not more, outside the country.
Did you hit a lot of South America with Major Lazer?
I don't think we did any South America with them when I was with them for about 9 months, and I don't think we did, but we did Israel, they did
Cuba.
Dubai. Diplo himself probably made it down there much. I did a tour down there with Empire of the Sun. That's a year ago. We were down there. I feel like I was down there more recently, but I can't remember with who or why.
I remember seeing like a Facebook check-in from you in South America. I don't remember when or why.
I think that's why I do Facebook, so I can actually look back and remember where I was.
Facebook memories.
Is there a Gus's Fried Chicken there? I mean, that would be the true test if we know you.
No, there's not. But I'm a big fan of the Peruvian chicken. I don't know what the name of it is, and also they
believe it's called pollo.
Well, you're right. And there's the peri peri, which is the Portuguese chicken, which you find in Brazil. Which I'm actually probably a bigger fan of that than the fried chicken, to be honest with you. Which is where when I was I have Australia, where Nando's, which is like the best chicken place in the world, even probably better than Gus's Fried Chicken, which is Portuguese chicken. So I reach further out than just fried chicken.
Okay. Nando's is oddly was started in South Africa.
Oh, well, that makes sense. But it's a Portuguese style. But yeah, that's amazing company.
When you're on the road, Dave, obviously it's chicken for Jim. What are you looking for? Is there something that keeps you entertained? Because obviously the day in and day out of being backstage at an arena is not the most exciting part of your day.
No, I mean, I would consider myself a bit of a foodie as well. I grew up in Santa Barbara, so I'm a big wine fan. I'm always looking for great restaurants, great wine bars.
Yeah, I don't only
great experiences around the world.
Other food too.
Jim enjoyed some good vino as well.
There's not any Gus's Vino Shacks between Memphis and Austin.
Dave, do you have to search hard to find good dinners? Because without a lot of nights off, do you have to find places that are open at 1, 2 o'clock in the morning when you can finally get a little break?
Well, I gotta imagine Justin's got real catering on a tour that level.
No, yeah, of course. We have a really good catering team as well. But I mean, like for our upcoming stadium run, we're doing like 2 shows a week. So it's just going to take so long to drag this massive tour around the world. So we're doing like 2 shows a week. So there'll be a lot of time to find.
Is there a single stage on that tour?
There's going to be a lot of stages on it.
Well, obviously there'll be a lot of steel, but do you guys have multiple sets like some of the bigger stadium tours, or are you guys using one set of show equipment?
Honestly, don't know. Grattan, our PM, handles all that, so I'll handle Justin.
We're kind of separated from what the production is doing.
No, exactly. I mean, to be honest with you, I have no idea what our stadium show looks like.
Can't wait to see it. I bet it's awesome.
Yeah, it's going to be fantastic. No idea what it is, but come see it.
Because I'm hearing things like Beeves was on the ice yesterday playing hockey, right?
Yeah, he was. He's
a
massive hockey fan.
Didn't he?
But I heard he was impressive. Like, that's what they were talking about on all the radio shows today.
Yeah, he actually plays like on the road. We have like 4 bags of hockey gear, and he actually like goes and plays all over. Like he's a massive hockey player.
Do you ever get them to rip up the back half of the arena floor? Just strip it down to the ice so he can play while you're setting up the stage?
He hasn't asked for that yet, but I forget if it was in Finland or Sweden. They actually had a second mini ice rink underground. So
like warm-up rink or something?
Like pre-show, yeah, if it was like a warm-up rink or something. So like pre-show, had all his hockey gear out, and he was down there playing, and he's actually really good. He's like NCAA level or something.
Do you think the next tour will be Bieber on ice?
That would be fantastic.
Talk to the production manager about it.
I know, right? I will get with Chris Grattan on that right away.
Less steel, more ice.
Less steel, more ice. Chris Grattan.
It could be amazing. So let's talk about what you guys do. I don't think the industry, even as a promoter, we assume once the bus is loaded and the semis are closed and we've sent you guys on your way, that's it. Like, you guys just show up and yell at us all day long to make stuff happen. What else is part of your job?
Well, according to Nick Schoenfield, we're just glorified babysitters. Inside joke. It depends. Every tour is different. I'm sure what I'm going to do, what I've done with Major Lazer or the Black Keys, and what I'm going to be doing with Imagine Dragons is completely completely different than what Dave is doing with Justin and what Dave has done with all the other acts he's worked with in the past. I mean, I think that's one of the things with this job is that you have to be able to wear many hats and be able to change and do whatever needs to be done. It doesn't matter what it is, how degrading it is, how horrible it is, it gets done. I mean, in my case, we can be an accountant. We can be that babysitter, and that's just what we do. We can be a runner if it means getting food or whatever artist needs. If our artist needs anything from, tampons to whatever it is, we run out and get them. I mean, that's our job, so it's all encompassing. If they need something, we're there to get it. And same thing with the business side of it, from it's accounting, if it's tickets, whatever needs to be done. And every tour is different.
Yeah, I mean, there are so many variables in it, and it starts with every artist views their tour manager differently and has a different set of expectations for them, because that's how they've always had their tour managers work. That's always like what they've had from them. Artists don't go to like tour manager 101 class and like every tour manager does A, B, C, and D. Make sure that they always do, C and D in the afternoon.
Do you think any of your artists would be open to that? We have an extra day at Polestar next year. We'll have production live and we'll have artist live. We'll come and teach the artist how to talk to the production guy.
That would be amazing.
And then we'll teach them how to be nice to the promoter's girlfriends. But not too nice.
Well, yeah, I was going to say, you probably
just
want to
nice
keep your
enough.
girlfriends away from the artist. I think that's just a good idea in general.
Just nice enough. But yeah, so I mean, it varies by artist all across the board.
And I think to get to a certain level and to do what you do, I think you need to have all those skills and know how to do it. It's just part of the job. And also going back to even knowing production and knowing that I think some tour managers may not have anything to do with that. But personally for me, I mean, when I was with the Black Keys, I helped design the shows. And, even if you're not an audio guy or lighting guy, but I think you have to know and be aware of that. I mean, I've done production on some tours where I've had to. I wouldn't call myself a production manager, although I have done that before. I don't know a lot about it, but
what
I could
would you
fake
call
it.
yourself?
Tour manager is what I do, but I think that's all encompassing. And like Dave said, every tour is different. We're wearing different hats no matter what we do. Sometimes we're security. Sometimes it's whatever needs to be done, you have to be ready to do it. That's it.
Very chameleon-like.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Okay, so how much time did you guys get to spend off the road at home this year? And obviously, speaking of 2016, is 17 is what, 20 days in?
I would say maybe 2.5 months total.
I mean, I don't really ever look at it like that, but I just assume and shoot for touring 10 months out of the year. I mean, that's what I've been doing for 20 years. That's been my goal, is touring for 10 months. And in saying that, part of that can be is more working, not necessarily being gone, but working. And our job does encompass working at home and advancing, and we're always pretty much working. But I want to be getting a paycheck at least 10 months, and hopefully some of that time where I can be off. But if you're working for a tour that's going, you're never really off. I mean, my days are, even when I'm off the road, my days are anywhere from 6 to 18 hours a day, even when I'm not on the road. So when I'm on the road, you can figure they're 18 to 20 hours, but when I'm off the road, but they're still happening. The cool thing about it is, like, I work in the morning, I work at night, I may work 3-4 hours in the morning, 3-4 hours at night, take the afternoons off and spend it with my son, but I've still got to work.
Yeah, I would say, like, tour management at this level, you never really have any days off. You're always answering emails or texts, or you're going to something like Polestar Live or TourLink. Like, there's always something surrounding work.
And you
so,
never
just like
leave the
turn your
job.
phone off.
Literally, I sleep with my phone in my hand, and people are like, "Oh, you got to shut your phone off." I'm like, I have to read to sleep. So in one hand I have my phone, in the other hand I have my iPad, and that's how I sleep. And it's there. And every email that comes up, it doesn't matter what time of night it is, I'm looking.
It's like the digital version of Moses coming down the mountain.
It goes off, and I'm looking at it, and I'm seeing if there's. To be honest with you, I might take it off my hand and put it next to my pillow if I'm not on a tour. But if there's anything that could be artist related going on, I mean, volume's up, phone is in my hand, I'm ready to go to work at any moment.
And that attitude is how you work 10 months out of the year versus only 3 or 4 months. I know, like, a lot of people who quote unquote tour manage who only work maybe 3 to 4 months of the year, and they wonder why. Well, if you turn your phone off for 2 weeks at a time, someone calls you looking for a gig, you're not there, and they move on to the next person on that list.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
remember working for a metal act who's medium-sized metal act, guys making middle-class incomes but have been around for a long time. Then I went on a tour, and I was filling in for somebody who had stolen some money from them. And I gave them a day sheet for a day off, and I said, here's my information, here's what's around the venue, call me if you need anything. And they were like, we can call you on a day off? I'm like, what do you mean, can you call me on a day off? I'm like, yeah, I'm running the tour. You call
I'm
me
your
whenever
tour
I'm
butler.
here.
I'm here to make you happy.
And they go,
and
like,
most of all, to keep you out of jail.
Our other guy said, like, lose my number on days off. He didn't even want us to call him or we wouldn't see him. I'm like,
he was busy laundering their stolen money.
Well, and other things. He was spending their money, let's just say that, on many things.
Laundering it through the local strip club.
Or, yes. But, so I mean,
Nothing wrong with that.
I don't understand the mentality. It's like, for me, I mean, I was there from day one. It's like, when you're working, you're there 24 hours. I don't take time out. I mean, one of the things we discussed this week at TourLink was we had to put an emphasis on health and talking about mental health and physical health in the industry, which, I was on the panel and I was like, I'm the poster boy for what not to do.
Labor versus leisure.
But, I mean, I think with Wendy, who's my tour manager assistant, and Adrian Biondo, who's my production coordinator, like, they would drag me out on days off to do stuff in a city. And I started to realize that, you know what, I actually can take the afternoon off and can take a few hours out to walk around the city and do that. And that, to me, that's been like a major thing. And I try to do it. Like, I would literally come into the hotel, like, go to work, and I stay working all day. And I felt guilty about walking away from my computer because I have so much to do. But if around that, it doesn't really get to be more if you take a few hours to, like,
enjoy Rome.
Yes.
You're there.
Yeah, exactly. Enjoy the city I'm in, or have a nice meal, or which is I like days. I like, that's one of the things I do. For me, it's food. I love eating great food, finding great restaurants, finding local stuff, so, and it's great having people like that will pull me away from that, because if there's nobody to pull me away from that, I'll literally work 20 hours a day, sleep 4, go work another 20 hours a day and kill myself.
Let me ask you guys about your pet peeves. I mean, on a tour like Bieber, you're dealing with one promoter for the entire tour. AEG has the whole thing. So your relationship with that promoter, whether the show is a good or bad show, and all of them on the Bieber tour I think are good, but in example, even if there was a bad day financially with ticket sales, you wouldn't feel it because the tour would make up for it and they would still treat you like the show was sold out. But on some of the lower level tours that aren't stadium, there are hit and miss dates. So what would some of the things that you deal with promoters and local production guys and clubs that particularly irk you guys?
I don't know, because I think it's the level that Dave and I are at. I think we have relationships with people, so I don't know that we don't get what we want. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like, one, we're reasonable enough to know we're not going to ask for something that...
Because when a show's dying, you guys are reasonable about helping out.
We understand.
We don't need every last thing on the rider today.
Into the show, and I'm for sure not going to be the nicest guy in the world, because I need what I need, and I can't say, like, that thing that you want to cut, I can't cut that because my band needs that.
They actually have to eat at some point today.
Or that bottle of booze, even though it's a lot of money, that's the one thing they care about. So I need that bottle of booze. Maybe I can cut here. Maybe I'll pay for the after show food, or we can split it, or I'll try to make something that I can work with you on and help with you on. I'm probably not going to give you everything you want. We're going to walk out where both of us are going to be like hurting a little bit, but go out friendly. We're going to be like, we both had to concede a little bit. At the end of the day, we're both going to be happy when we walk out.
I think it comes down to, like you were saying, the reputation of, if someone sees your name on a rider and they've worked with you previously, even if ticket sales are soft, they know that you're going to come in there kicking and screaming over whatever because they've worked with you previously.
So I think it's different at that level. I think we're dealing with our reputations, and I'm going to steer my crew and my people when they're asking for stuff. I'm going to walk into it going, hey guys, sales aren't great tonight. Money's not there. Be careful what you ask for. Come to me before you ask for it. Let's be conscious of this. These are our friends. And that's kind of generally the level I go into. I mean, I'm not a yeller. I can guarantee you that every promoter that I've worked with over a number of years has seen me yell, but I can guarantee you that every one of them will probably go, yeah, I get why you yelled at that time. I'm not a yeller, but when I do get mad, there's generally a good reason, and most times the promoter's going to go, yeah, I get why you were pissed off.
It would be justified for sure on mine as well.
Yeah.
Okay, and obviously there are promoters that you work with over and over again. It's usually the newer promoters that are working their way up that make the bigger mistakes because there's not a relationship there yet, per se.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're always going to find guys that we don't know or don't have those relationships with, but I think for my last year, I mean, I dealt with a lot of festivals, so that's a whole different animal. Then you're getting promoters then that might not know you, especially in the EDM world. There were probably people that I dealt with that I hadn't worked with previously because that's a whole different side of the business. And,
right, it might as well be comedy. It's just a whole different genre.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right.
It could be a culinary thing compared to rock and roll.
And
it's just
probably 75%.
They're selling tickets. markets, but
probably 75% of the people you're dealing with are not people you dealt with before because they're just dealing with that thing. So I did deal with a lot of that, and I had to develop new relationships with people. They didn't necessarily know who the guy in the suit was, which most people now know who the guy in the suit is. So in those cases, yeah, I mean, I did much more yelling last year than I normally do. Let's just put it that way.
Well, the independent guys tend to be a different world, right? Because some of those guys in Seattle, per se, UFC, like those guys are legitimate promoters.
Yeah.
They know how to do that stuff. But not in every market. In some of the markets, it's the drug dealer that's providing his warehouse full of people.
The EDM world is just so young and fresh. I mean, it's
becoming more legitimate, clearly.
Yeah, and I think at our level with Major Lazer last year, we were on the pro side of it, obviously. I think it was more we're getting new festivals, or it wouldn't be the promoter itself, because if you went to the promoter, but it might be the person you're dealing with who's the artist liaison or the
ground transportation.
Or the person at your stage that you were dealing with may not worked with before, or you know them, and so it's developing that relationship and kind of getting an understanding of this is what I need. I know it's not what you're used to. I know that's not how you usually work it, but this is what I need, and I need it, and you can't argue with me. You just have to give me what I need.
Now, I believe when a promoter upsets a production manager on a certain level, a road manager, production manager of a real elk, it gets through the level of A and B guys really fucking quickly. Now, I don't know if it's social media, but I believe somehow you guys are networked. Like, when somebody fucks up, you guys all know in seconds.
It's such a small world.
Yeah, it really is.
It's a very small, tight world.
Yeah.
So world not to fuck with you guys, like, has been a very clear thing. At the end of the day, the shows are easier and they come back when we don't fuck with you guys anyway. But clearly, we've learned that you guys can get the word out amazingly quick. I would liken it to high school girls, like the telephone line after school.
Well, I mean, I think it's on both sides. I mean, I'm sure that's on your side, too. I mean,
us promoters share information when things go badly as well.
Exactly right. I think it goes both ways. I think if there's a tour manager that you have an issue with, or a production manager that you've had an issue with, especially you, because you have an outlet, even though you may not mention that person by name, we can figure out pretty quickly who you're referring to or what you're doing. And some of us read it into it, even if it's not us. They go like, was that me? So, I mean, we all have that. And I think
I've been very careful not to name names in the podcast or online.
Yeah,
some of us can still tell, though.
You can mention something. And I had a situation with a major headliner act who had one of their people was working in a smaller act that was my opening act. They wanted ridiculous amounts of stuff that was like $2,000 a day. Their first of three bands wanted $2,000 a day in extra gear brought on the stage that came out of my band's pocket. It was okayed by everybody. And because it was so ridiculous, I actually posted the opening act's tour manager's email on Facebook, erased all the details of who it was, but it only took 6 months for it to get back to him that I threw him under the bus. And I got confronted by one of the artists this summer in Scotland, by the artist herself, confronted me and called me out for like not being a nice guy, which wasn't true. It was, I mean, I could see her point, but I was protecting my artist. That was like a year and a half later, and I got called out by
I can't wait to finish the session so we can find out who the artist was.
I got a question about going like above and beyond. You say you never stop working. Specific kind of to Major Lazer, because Diplo's known as a guy who loves doing after shows and will go DJ somewhere.
Guy doesn't stop.
Do you have to deal with that too, or does your job stop at Major Lazer?
He's got his own tour manager's amazing, Kyle McKinnon, who's his guy. I was tour director, so I was kind of above.
Like air traffic control.
Yeah, I mean, and honestly, that's pretty much how
because there's a lot of
you do
moving
it.
pieces. They all have their different side projects, right?
Yeah, because each guy had their own
multiple
thing.
shows in a night and stuff, right?
I would say the three of them were probably doing together. There was 8 to 9 shows a week, so they were always
on top of the Major Lazer shows.
Well, no, I mean all together. So they maybe have been doing 4 Major Lazer shows a week, but on top of it, they were doing, probably each day doing their own show. Diplo was probably doing, I'd seen him do 6, 7 shows a week, with multiple 2, 3 times a day. Sometimes he was doing shows. Like, the guy's incredible, and I don't know how the people that travel with him work with it. I barely held on, and I was just doing Major Lazer. Diplo was his own entity. Then we had the 2 other guys, which are B Party, which they were always flying off doing their own thing. And then I had another party, which was the dancers. And then I had 2 crews going back and forth in the U.S. and Europe, full production in both continents. And we'd be jumping and skipping on those because the routing was such that we were always kind of going back and forth, so it never stopped.
And those guys are doing double and triple time on weekend, right?
Yeah, and that was the thing. I mean, it's got that country kind of schedule to it when you're working like Thursday through Sunday, and they're probably doing 2, 3 shows a day, sometimes on those, and guarantee almost 90% of the time there's at least 2 shows going on.
Let me ask you, when you guys sign on for an act and you're on a tour, especially you or a tour, because you have a couple that go on simultaneously, so you jump back and forth sometimes, they overlap.
Yeah, I've been doing with Empire of the Sun. I've been doing that. It's just worked out that way. I also have like Sean Hoffman from Bruno Mars and Curtis Jenkins from Miranda Lambert have filled in for me personally on some dates, and I just have this pool that I pull from to kind of cover them because they do festivals here and there.
So when you sign on for the tour being your thing, I mean, Justin's tour is going to go on for 2-3 years. Are you locked in now for the next handful of years with that tour?
Yeah, so for all of 2017, I will only be doing Bieber.
That's basically a 2-year run for you.
Yeah, so I started with Justin in July. I went straight from Tori Kelly straight into taking over the Justin Bieber tour right in the middle of the last North American run. And then we'll be going throughout the rest of the year on this run, so...
Nice job security.
I'm looking at 2019 for Imagine Dragon. So all of this year, all of next year, and I'm guessing probably into 19.
So once you get to this level, the security is amazing.
Yes, but at the same time, I mean, 2 years in a row come, in October, November, I was waiting for the phone to ring. Doing it 20 years, it's still an uncomfortable feeling when you don't know what you're doing. And I've been lucky enough that I've been doing it long enough that I know my phone's going to ring. I just don't know when it's going to ring and who it's going to be. And I've gotten, I could say since Major Lazer wrapped up at the end of October, I've probably talked to 10 different pretty major acts in the EDM and the rock world. And I just signed with Imagine Dragons 3 days ago. So it's been that long of like finding the right, and there's some that I've been offered that not enough money, not quite enough work, so it's hopefully when Dave's done with Justin, that'll move into something else. There'll be something coming up, but we never know. When we're done, and we hope that there's something there, but we don't know. We're freelancers,
Exactly. That's what I was going to say. It truly is freelance work where you have your clients, but a project may end, and then you may have a break, and there's always, no matter how long you do this, I think there's always going to be a little voice like, well, I wonder how long this break is going to be. Like,
you're a little young to retire, so.
Dave, you said you took over for Justin Bieber in the middle of a tour in July. How often do tour managers drop off in the middle of a run?
You've just hit on something special.
It happens. I mean,
that didn't seem like that one was planned so much.
Other than thievery?
Yeah, it could be a whole different... there are so many reasons for a tour manager to be fired. Not just, well, he's bad at his job. It could just be the artist and the tour manager just don't see eye to eye on certain things.
Sometimes it's absolutely no reason then. Look, part of it is we're at the top of the food chain, so if something goes wrong, somebody's got to be the scapegoat, and the buck stops with us. So it can happen only because of it. And I'm just guessing this, and I hope not stepping on line, but my guess is that Dave at this point has probably lasted as longer than a lot of people have at this point. I'm
with
guessing.
Justin,
yeah, with Justin, that you've lasted longer than.
But he's kind of grown up and matured, it seems, from the outside. It seems like as he's gotten older, he's grown up and he's become an easier entity to deal with, I imagine.
No, yeah, definitely. I've only been with him since July, but I've only had access to like the stories and stuff that you've had access to. But
the stuff he's in the press for are pretty innocent stuff. He was playing hockey on a charity game yesterday. It's like not exactly something TMZ was really looking for. It's like it's pretty wholesome stuff. That's what
monkeys involved.
Yeah, that's what you're hoping for, right? Nobody's getting arrested for that.
No, not at all. And apparently it was really good, the hockey game. So, yeah, it's good stuff.
All right, until he takes his skate off and stabs someone with it, which will inevitably be your fault, right, Dave?
Boy, you went dark with that quick, Jake.
It's like Slapshot.
Well, I can't think of a better place to end than Justin Bieber stabbing someone with their skate. I think that's more Billy Madison right there. Happy Gilmore. All right. Awesome. Thanks so much for joining us, guys. This is awesome.
Thank you for having us.
So glad to have Jim back on the podcast. And for those of you that attended with us to Polestar Live, special thanks to Jim for being our guest bartender and serving up some Patron last week in Los Angeles.
It's Jamie Adler. I'm hanging out at Dan Steiney, Promoter 101.
That's it for episode 18 of Promoter 101. Join us next week for our guest, the man behind country touring for Live Nation, from Miranda Lambert to Luke Bryant to the country mega ticket, the great one and Chicago Cubs fan, Mr. Brian O'Connell. We're also going to be welcoming the agent behind the Snoop Dogg and Bone Thugs-n-Harmony Puff Puff Pass 2 tour, Mr. Jamie Adler. It's going to be a monster episode next week, Dan.
If you missed our live show in LA, you can catch us on our world tour as we bring Promoter 101 around the globe.
We're going to be at ILMC at the Royal Garden Hotel in jolly old London town And again, we're so sorry to our friends in London as we keep running out of English cliches to say each week.
March 16th, South by Southwest brings us to Austin to interview the head of APA's music division, Steve Martin.
April 19th, we're going to be at Canadian Music Week 2017. We've got Golden Voice's Elliot Lefko and UTA's Jack Ross.
Keep a lookout for some of the great upcoming guests we've got. Paradigm's Tom Windish, Ticketfly's Andrew Druskin, ICM Partners Andrea Johnson, from the Warped Tour Kevin Lyman, Reigning King of Comedy from Gersh Rick Greenstein, and so many more.
If you have thoughts about the podcast or want us to interview somebody, we want to hear about it. Send us an email with your ideas to stein@promoter101.net.
And you can follow Luke at WLuke Pierce and me at The Jew on Twitter.
Be sure to subscribe to Promoter 101 wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you like what we're doing, please tell your friends about us or drop us a review. We want to know what you think.
You can always go back and catch some of our past podcasts at promoter101.net.
Our past guests include Shep Gordon, Tom Ross, Straight No Chaser, Stuart Ross, Nick Adler, AG's Jay Marciano, just to name a few.
I'm Dan Steinberg for my broadcast partner, Luke Pierce. Have a great week.
Hi, this is Steve Martin, not the actor, not the PR guy, the agent from APA. I'll be on Dan Steinberg's perpendicular, fantastic, psychedelic Promoter 101 podcast from South by Southwest, Thursday, March 16th.